Welcome to Backyard Cigars. Now, this is what I would consider, for me, a highly anticipated review. And the reason for that is that it isn't every day that you smoke something like this. This baby is none other than El Septimo Fabuloso Dark Ruby Toro size, or Toro shape, actually, cigar. And it's from the Diamond collection of El Septimo cigars. This particular cigar is 6 1/4 with a 68 ring gauge. It is quite a monster of a cigar. I mean, just look at it. It's just a beast. And I know I've said this before about larger ring gauge cigars. All of that goes out of the window today. Because today, the information behind the cigar is indicating that it isn't just another one of your typical large ring gauge cigars. The price, the exclusivity, where you can purchase it, the tobacco within it, and how it's made is wanting to tell you that it is beyond special. So this cigar is a Costa Rican puro. Wrapper, binder, filler, all handmade in Costa Rica. And today, I'm gonna smoke this cigar that happens to have a closed foot, and I'm gonna tell you what I think about it. Luckily, my cutter can accommodate such a ring gauge, so I am going to do my best here. And it's a perfect clip. Perfect clip. It's either that or I'm just lucky like that. Now, I've got a lot to say about this cigar. I do. So buckle your seatbelts. This might be a bumpy ride. Might be. Just maybe. If I can just find my lighter. Now, when I say it isn't just every day that you smoke a cigar like this, I don't mean just in the fact that it's hard to find. Well, it's a lot more to do with the price. So I'm going to let you know right off the bat that this cigar, this Billy Club here, is $76. But I'm not going to judge it by its price, nor by the way that I can utilize this as a self-defense weapon. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go there, not just yet. First, we're going to be fair in this review, and we're going to be real about everything that this cigar brings to the table. Closed foot. A lot of people, and actually you have some people that say this draw really gets tight in the beginning, and there is that possibility, but I am optimistic. Okay. Now this cigar has been in the humidor for about a month and a week. at a 66 RH. And I really thought about leaving it there for several more months, but the suspense is killing me. I've read a lot about the cigar. I have researched on the cigar. I have researched on the company. I have researched on Costa Rica. And I'm bringing you this information for you to take home. Now, because of the closed foot, toasting is, and it's a big foot, toasting is a little more intensive, just to make sure we don't get any wonky burn lines here and we get full flavor from start to finish. And I think we have a properly lit cigar here. I am going to give that a rest for just now. And as I let this develop, let's start from the beginning. This company was founded back in 2005. I found out about this company back in 2012 is when I first heard about it. And I didn't know much about it other than it was almost impossible to purchase the cigars unless you went on one or two gray area sites. And the price of the cigars obviously were extremely high, $75 to $100, $150 per cigar. It became increasingly popular on Instagram a few years after that, I believe in 2016, 17, and several reviewers and cigar writers commented how it seemed to be a favorite of narco traffickants in certain posts and pictures. It was a cigar that symbolized power, not only in how much it cost, but obviously in the ring gauge sizes. Now, since then, you have different options in Vitola sizes, and you have also another line which offers a cheaper cigar at around $20. But back then, you had the big cigars and a lot of prominent, fearsome alpha males posing with these cigars, and it sort of captivated a certain audience. A rich, wealthy, successful man, not necessarily a narco, but a rich, wealthy, successful alpha male or female that could handle a cigar of this size and afford it easily. So give it some extra toasting just to be on the safe side here. Now, when I started doing research on this cigar, on this monster of a cigar, one of the first things that I noticed were that in a lot of written reviews, the reviewer fully disclosed the fact that the company sent them two samples or one sample of the cigar and asked for a favorable review, and got it in both of those cases. Got it, yeah. Not too long ago, I believe Cigar Score did a review on this cigar and didn't give it a very good review, and he got trashed in the comments. Another wonderful reviewer, I believe the name of the channel is Daily Cigar, did an excellent review on one of their cigars, and obviously gave it a very bumblebee a very, very good review. Now, I haven't had that cigar, so that's not the cigar we're trying here today. This is the Fabuloso. And we're going to talk about what happened in 2019 when Zaya Yunan, an Assyrian businessman, very well known, very, very wealthy. I'm not exactly sure if he's a billionaire, but I believe he is. And he's known for, he owns a lot of hotels and a lot of different businesses. And he bought the company in 2019 because he's a cigar smoker and he loves cigars. And while he'll tell you that this is the smallest company that he owns, he will also tell you that this is the company, one of the companies he holds closest to his heart. He really believes in these cigars. He really believes in his company. Now, this is very interesting to note. Sometime in 2018, a reviewer by the name of Tom Ford did a review on one of El Septimo cigars. And if you look in the comments section, you can actually see that Zaya Yunan left a comment thanking the reviewer for putting him onto that cigar and telling the reviewer that this was the best cigar he ever had. And lo and behold, a year later, he buys the company. Getting a lot of hay right now, a lot of hay. The tobacco in this cigar is aged between 5 and 15 years. And what I'm getting right now is just a lot of hay. That's it. So we talked about the owner, Zaya Yunan, an Assyrian businessman. Now, before I go any further into some of the things that he has said in certain interviews, or in one particular interview that I took note of, I want to tell you that my research into the man revealed a highly intelligent individual, ambitious but not greedy, stern yet caring, a man that was born in poverty, came to the United States with very little money, struggled very, very much so. I mean, he really struggled. His family struggled with poverty. In addition to that, he is a proud American. Very, very proud of being an American. He loves America dearly, and he loves to help people. When he speaks, you kind of get this vibe of that kind of business, motivational, ambition type of individual who can coach a person to find the best within themselves so that they can, in turn, help others. But he's really a down-to-earth guy. He may own a lot of yachts, and he may own a company that sells $76 cigars. But when you hear him talking about other subjects that don't pertain to cigars, you get an idea of what this man is like. And he is, in my humble opinion, what I believed to be a good man, a fair man. But we're talking about the cigars right now. And we're talking about how he views these cigars as well. And not just what I'm going to tell you about what I'm tasting in the cigar, but the rest of the information that I have researched. Now, they're expensive, but there's a lot of aging that goes into this tobacco, 5 to 15 years old. And I've got notes here, and I'm just starting to get a really strong aroma from this cigar. It's really picking up really, really well. One of the things that the company talks about, and that Saya talks about, is how they will only use 10% of their crop. 10%. In contrast, Hiroshi Robaina in Cuba uses 90% of his crop. They only use 10% of their crop. The company's owner highlights the problems with Cuba's soil and their inconsistency with quality. He goes on to talk about how there are nearly 2,500 cigar companies out there, but only 99% of these cigar makers and companies he says 99% of these cigar makers and companies actually know less about cigars and the cigars that they sell than the consumers who buy them. Now let's start with that. I don't agree with that. You're telling me 99%, and look, I've already said it, seems like a cool guy, has a high IQ, very intelligent, he knows how to market. The reason I'm holding this cigar now is because he bought the company, because the distribution of this cigar has increased. It has widened. It has improved. The availability of the cigar, the new cigar lines, which are cheaper, $18 to $20 something. That's because of him. Because he loves the company, and I do believe he loves these cigars. But he says that 99% of cigar makers and cigar companies know less about their cigars than the consumers who buy them. Still, hey, but I'll let you chew on that one, because this is what he believes. This is what he said. Where are the statistics to prove this? There are no specific examples other than how he will say, he did make a mention of how there are a lot of guys out there that have money, and I've mentioned this before, have money, and they'll take 100, 200, 300,000, and they will pay another company or a farmer and some rollers to roll them some cigars. So I got $200,000, $300,000. I'll go to a factory in the Dominican Republic and I'll say, make me some cigars. And yet I won't know anything about the cigars or anything about cigars in general, but I have the money to have them make it for me. Now that does happen. It does. It happens a lot. But in a lot of cases, these men and women know their cigars. You know, you're gonna tell me Kyle Gellis doesn't know his cigars? Doesn't know? I mean, yeah, Kyle Gellis isn't making cigars himself. But I digress. I don't agree with that comment. Let's talk about some other notes that I have here. First of all, the packaging is extremely unique in that they don't use cedar boxes. It's a very unique presentation. If you really want to see more about the packaging, check out that review by Daily Cigar on its Septimo cigars, and you'll see this exquisite, beautiful packaging that very few companies, I think, are doing packaging like this, if any, because there's no cedar, and the presentation is beautiful. Okay, we've said that. Love the presentation. We know we're using very, very well-aged tobacco in these cigars. That can justify some of the price, I suppose. Now, Zaya Yunan, he did a video on YouTube where it was sort of a Zoom video where there was a couple and then there was the host and he was a guest and he was being interviewed and they were talking about the company and the cigars. And towards the end of the video, he gets the opportunity to really go into depth about what makes the cigar special, what makes the company special. Some of the pros that he outlined for the cigar were the fact that this is a completely organic cigar. Very little, if any, pesticides are used. And he feels that this makes this cigar healthier, a much healthier cigar. It's grown at a very high altitude. Now I've gotten different altitudes. I've heard as low as 5,000 to as high as 9,500. In some cases, I've heard 1,000, but generally speaking, between 5,000 and 9,500 feet, high up in the mountains, where there is thin air. And this altitude and thin air does not allow infestations of pests, bugs to affect the crops. So, one, he doesn't have to use any fertilizer. Two, he doesn't have to worry about pests. Now, I did a little research. Yes, bugs can actually live and fly at these high altitudes, but I did find a lot of evidence to show that they were not particularly comfortable at these high altitudes, and the type of bugs that would endanger a tobacco crop were not going to be able to have a foothold at these altitudes. Getting a little woody note. And I will say that out of all of the large ring gauge cigars that I've tried to date, so far, this is the best tasting one so far, from what I'm getting so far. I'm not getting a lot, but what I am getting, the woody and the hay notes, they're good. They're pretty decent. Now, so these are some of the pros that Zaya outlined and that you can also find on the website. Another plus was being up on the mountain in the way that they're situated for irrigation and the watering of the crops, and that in the way the irrigation worked, it was beneficial to the crops at the slant that they were at on the mountains. Now these things are all true. In terms of the irrigation, the thin air, the high altitude, those things are all true. El Septimo stands for the seventh. Uh, if you go to the website, they say that the cigar is named after, it's symbolic of the seventh day that God rested and observed his creation. But in the interview that Zaya did, he indicated that El Septimo, seventh, stood more for the seventh sense that a person has. And he went on to describe it as something that we don't normally experience, and that we rarely experience it. And when we do, it is extremely memorable. And he cites an example of eating something that's exquisite, an experience that is mind-numbing and that brings about a certain feeling and triggers the seventh sense. And he says that these cigars trigger the seventh sense, and that every time you smoke one of these, you are experiencing the seventh sense. And that he wanted to share that because we don't normally, as human beings, get to experience the seventh sense. And while he acknowledges that these cigars are expensive, he figures if you can only do it once a month, then at the very least, you're still experiencing the seventh sense once a month. Having a little bit of an issue with the burn line here. I'm going to use a soft flame to touch it up because I don't want to over torch it. Okay. And if you've ever been bitten by a bumblebee, you'll know why I moved out of the way. Because you don't want to get bitten by a bumblebee. El Septimo Cigar, El Septimo Cigar Company, may seem to be at the moment the trendiest, most popular cigar company in Cuba. And there have been reports by other reviewers, and I believe even in the review, in the interview he did on YouTube, claiming that they're the only Costa Rican puro out on the market. And I'm here to tell you that's just not so. We know Atabey makes cigars in Costa Rica, but Atabey doesn't use any Costa Rican tobacco. Atabey doesn't actually list where they get their tobacco. Rumors of Cuba, Nicaragua, Dominican Republic, even Honduras have been what we've heard. But one thing that Alfonso can actually comment on is that they don't use any Costa Rican tobacco. They just manufacture there. And it's very expensive to manufacture cigars in Costa Rica because Costa Rica, very much like Panama or Belize and a lot of these Central American companies, they have very strict anti-smoking laws, and the taxes for tobacco and tobacco manufacturing are just so high that it costs a lot more money. The highest paid rollers, I believe, in the world are in Costa Rica. So you're paying a lot of money and you're paying a lot of taxes. And sometimes that's why you find that these cigars that come out of Costa Rica tend to be expensive, like Atabey, even though it's not even using Costa Rican tobacco. But there's a gentleman by the name of Phillip Wynn of Felipe Gregorio Cigars. And he's been growing tobacco in the Cordillera Central of Costa Rica. And this is what he says: I grow and develop Havana types of tobacco that are pre-Castro and genetically pure. At 3,000 feet above sea level in the mountains, I grow rarefied and long retired seeds that few remember and even fewer have even heard of. Cuban seeds like Rezago, Once, and Pelo de Ángel, or seeds from other countries like Cola de Gallo, Llavis, and Besuki, are the tobacco equivalent of growing heirloom tomato seeds. Now this is Phillip Wynn of Felipe Gregorio Cigars. And these are companies that have been there before 2005. But they don't have that. They don't have Saya Yunat. They don't have rich men taking pictures on Instagram with these beautiful cigars. They're beautiful cigars. I will give them that. And they smell amazing. They do. But tell us what you're tasting, Jose. Well, I'm still getting a barnyard hay, and I'm getting a little bit of sweetness now. The woody notes. That's where I'm at with this cigar right now. But as you well know, this is a 68 ring gauge cigar. There's a lot to go on here. But Phillip Wynn goes on to say, most of the Habano varieties are similar in appearance, with some more round or wide than others. The Cola de Gallo differs most in appearance. The leaves are very narrow and come to a sharp point. But the fact that we grow at high elevation and steep inclines allows us to grow without pesticides. At this altitude, the soil is devoid of chlorine, making the combustion rate of the tobacco perfect. Now, in addition to Phillip Wynn growing tobacco in Costa Rica, we have another cigar company that is also manufacturing and using Costa Rican tobaccos and has a Costa Rican puro as well. Brun del Rey is a Costa Rican cigar company that takes a lot of pride because they've been around in Costa Rica for a long time. Long time. Brun del Rey has been the leading tobacco producer in Costa Rica for many years now. And the owner, Carlo Corazzo, believes that the heritage is very important. The most well-known cigar company to come out of Costa Rica is Brun del Rey, with brands like Brun del Rey Gold, Premium, Colonial, and the 1787, which is a Costa Rican puro, 1787 Libertad, 1638. Carlo Corazza has established himself, especially in the European market. Now, why am I talking about other cigar companies when I'm reviewing El Septimo? Because these companies have a place in Costa Rica, and some of the things that involve these companies kind of relate to the cigar, and they're backing up some of these claims. Carlos Corazzo says, like many times, it started with a trip to Cuba. I quit smoking cigarettes. Then in 2001, I went with a friend to Cuba. I tried smoking cigars. I liked it very much. And that led to the start of the company. So maybe, you think they've only got a couple of years on El Septimo. I don't know exactly when Phillip Wynn was doing it, but they set up operations in Costa Rica. And the one thing that Carlos Corazo goes on to say is, our marketing guy found out in the library that Costa Rica was the first country in the region to export 1,000 pounds of tobacco. This was back in 1638, and that's why I created a brand called 1638. It puts Costa Rica on the map, and it proves that it was and is a tobacco country. And it talks about 1787 and how it's 100% Costa Rican puro. And he said, I found someone in the south of the country who grows really good tobacco. And in 1787, at that time, Costa Rica belonged to the Guatemalan kingdom and was a known producer of high quality tobacco for high class people. Okay. So we've established that much. 1638 was a long time ago. A really long time ago. And the fact of the matter is that Costa Rica really isn't rich in history, despite those facts, when it comes to tobacco manufacturing or the tobacco history. It's played a part, and there are some things that have indeed occurred in Costa Rica. Let's go to, this is a report, United States Department of Agriculture, issued March 1941, and in it details different nations and their tobacco production. From Costa Rica, seeds presented by J.M. Orozco, Jefe de la Sección de Botánica, that's the chief of the botanical department, de Agricultura, San Pedro Montes, received June 24th, 1936. Chilcagre, from Chilcagre, an Indian village at the foot of the Irasu volcano in Costa Rica. Interesting for its resistance to adverse conditions and its ease of cultivation. Criollo de Flor Blanco, a variety extensively cultivated for more than 60 years and very disease resistant. Now that's a report from the United States Department of Agriculture from 1941 with information that they received in 1936. It means that things are happening in Costa Rica in regards to tobacco, but it does not indicate, at least even in present day, that Costa Rica is a tobacco-friendly country. It isn't, not necessarily, but it has to operate businesses and it has to make money off taxation. So it's not going to discourage people from coming there. But if you go there, you know you're going to pay, and you're going to pay a lot. And you're going to have to put a hefty price tag on your cigars. It's a very smooth cigar, medium body, medium strength, a lot of barnyard notes, woodiness, mild sweetness, very dry finish. That's what we got so far. It's a nice cigar. It's making me feel very nice. I feel quite elegant at the moment. But let me read you another report that I dug up. And this is from the United States Department of Agriculture, issued June 1940, with extended reports included up to 1951. Okay? And also with reports on plant exploration from 1936 as well. And this was by B.Y. Morrison, principal horticulturist horticulturist in charge. Division of Plant Exploration and Introduction. Also information from 1939. And in it, there's a report that is translated from French by Cecil Charles that dates back to 1889. And this report was written by Paul Biolay. And it's called Costa Rica and Her Future. And it's from 1889. And in it, it lists number four, monopolies. The government has reserved for itself two monopolies in Costa Rica: the sale of tobacco and the manufacture of liquors. We have already alluded to the first. In speaking of cultures, we shall add here that the cigar industry, reduced at present to the manufacture of common cigarettes and ugly little cigars, would certainly be afforded great scope with the cessation of the monopoly. The chicarre tobacco, which was formerly harvested between San Jose and Cartago, was an undeniably superior quality and was greatly appreciated by foreign connoisseurs. Now, we talked about in the other report that I mentioned about how that was grown in an Indian village at the foot of the Irazu mountain, a volcano. And should its culture again become free, it will be an object for large exportation, not only in leaves, but also in the shape of home manufactured products. So that was from Costa Rica and Her Future, 1889. There's history in Costa Rica with tobacco, just as there's some history in Panama and a bit more history in places like the Philippines and Puerto Rico. But Costa Rica hasn't been that friendly to the manufacturing and the cultivation of tobacco from a long time. And that seems to be changing now. Now that you have companies like Brun de Re and Arabe with Select Tobaccos and now it's Septimo with Zaya Yunnan there, maybe things are changing. The one issue that I have with this cigar company at Septimo that I question, and you tell me if I'm wrong here. I worked in the wine and liquor industry. I knew a lot of sommeliers, I knew a lot of wine experts, liquor experts, but a lot of wine experts as well, distributors, people that had extensive knowledge about wine. And some of them smoked cigars, and we talk about cigars, but they didn't necessarily have a vast knowledge of cigars. They dabbled. Some a little more than others. Now, Zaya says, and I don't know how to feel about this, our cigars are not made by farmers. They're not made by farmers. That's what he says. They're made by scientists. And he goes on to say that before they release a blend, a line, a cigar, he brings in 7 world-renowned wine blenders and tasters. And he tasks them with the job of tasting the different blends and determining which one is best and approving which blend should hit the market, which blend should be produced. And so these wine experts, 7 wine experts, symbolic number there, once again, sit around and smoke cigars and talk science with the scientists and determine what cigars are going to be a hit with the consumer and which cigars they should invest in for a future line, or just in general, if any tweaks need to be made to a blend. So you don't really have a master blender. You have these 7. And I don't, this is what Zaya says himself. This is the way that it's done, through science and through the palates of these wine experts, because their palates are so refined that they must actually know just how good a cigar should taste. I'm going to leave that marinating in your brain as I smoke a little bit more of this Septimo cigar, and I come back with some more notes, hopefully something different, and we can just touch base on a few more things, and you tell me what you think. Now I'm back, and I've been struggling a little bit with the burn line on this cigar, and I've had to give it several touch-ups. And I kind of expected that a little bit. Just something that I find that occurs with a lot of big ring gauge cigars. But as I was smoking it, I started to get, aside from the barnyard notes, it got a little earthy and nutty. Some sweetness prevailed and came forth. It was a very small amount of sweetness, but it was present. And it's just very smooth, and you can really taste the aged tobacco here. If you like aged tobacco, then this is your thing. This is gonna be your thing. Whether you're willing to pay the additional price tag, the additional money that they charge, is another story, is another issue for the average consumer. But the 1% is definitely not going to struggle in acquiring and smoking these cigars, if that's what they choose. Is that their target? I mean, perhaps. Zaya didn't quite say that, but it seems to be the case. I will say that out of all of the big ring gauge cigars that I've ever had, this has been the one that has felt the most comfortable in my hand. It really has. I kind of, you can feel the construction on it. It's just really good construction. The burn line, I mean, you've got all this tobacco in here. It's just really difficult to get a nice razor sharp burn line. But it's been pleasing me enough that I don't really mind that I've had to touch. I've touched it up, 3 times? Maybe 4? Earthiness, nutty notes, barnyard, hay. That's it. And sweetness that comes and goes. That's it. Now, one of the things that intrigued me about some of the claims that Zaya listed in his interview on YouTube And the one that probably intrigued me the most was the fact that he said, this is what he said. He said, if you smoke El Septimo cigar, you're not gonna, you can walk into, if you're in your garden smoking El Septimo and you walk into your house, your wife, your girlfriend, your significant other isn't going to be able to tell that you were smoking a cigar. The cigar odor is not going to stick to your clothing, to your person. And we're not talking about if you're in a cigar lounge where other people are smoking, right? Because then that kind of ruins the test. But I'm in a controlled environment in regards to the odor because I'm just smoking this. So that's going to be a big thing for me, that I want to see how much my clothing smells of cigar after I'm done with this. Now he goes on to say, cigar smoke, the smell of cigar smoke and how it sticks to our clothing originates from the pesticides. El Septimo leaves no smell because it doesn't use pesticides. So I had to research a little bit on that. But I didn't have to go very far because luckily Holt Cigars had an article online, and the name of the article was Why the Smell of Smoke Sticks in Your Clothes. And this is how it begins. Before we get that leftover smoke smell out, we should take a minute to figure out how it got there in the first place. And so stubbornly too. Technically, a cigar smoke is a byproduct of the incomplete combustion of tobacco. It's primarily water, oils, and ash. Ash is an especially interesting animal. It's what didn't burn. These non-combustibles are mostly minerals, such as magnesium and potassium, and they're kind of sticky, evidenced by the mark it leaves on your shirt when you drop that sweet long ash on yourself. Now this is on Holt's website. The oils and fine ash particulates that get released into the air as smoke are what carry the aroma. It's the same as when you fry food. As the grease heats up and your battered haddock fillet starts to brown, the airborne oils and crispy batter particles get stuck in the weave of your shirt, leaving you smelling like you just pulled a double behind the cooktop at Long John Silver's. And as long as these tiny particles stick to your clothes, you're gonna smell them. End of story. It doesn't say anything about pesticides being the origin of the cigar smell. Now, again, Zaya Yunan, he's an extremely intelligent man. I sincerely doubt that he doesn't know certain things unless his scientists are misleading him, or unless this is just propaganda to promote his cigar as something out of this world, something that is just unthinkable, a cigar that doesn't leave an odor on your clothing. Who hasn't wished for that? I know I have. Because I love smelling it in the air around me. But when I'm done with this cigar, I don't necessarily like the lingering odor that remains on my clothing. Some of it you lay it down or air it out and it's gone in a day or two. In some cases, it's a little more stubborn, as the article indicates. And then you just gotta wash, right? That's it. Now normally, a shirt like this that I'm wearing today, if I'm smoking a cigar in it, I've got to wash it. I'm not even going to think about airing it out and trying to reuse it. But if what Zaya is saying is correct, then I won't have to worry about that. I can simply air it out if I choose to wear it one more time, or wash it anyway, and not have to wash it with as much detergent or on any kind of special setting to remove the additional oils from the cigar aroma. So I'm heading to what appears to be the final third, probably the longest final third that I'll ever experience, or one of the longest. It's a big cigar, and it's the type of cigar that when you're holding it speaks volumes about the kind of cigar smoker you are. What it says, it depends. It may say that you have a lot of money. It may say that you simply just prefer larger ring gauges, which is fine. We're allowed to like what we like. It may say that you feel that aged tobacco is superior to youthful tobacco or to slightly aged tobacco. Remember, folks, Cuba has been making incredible cigars for a long, long time. And some of the cigars and the tobacco in their cigars are not even more than 5 years old. And I can tell you how old the tobacco was back in the day. Now, I want to tell you, the aroma of this cigar is incredible. It's really good. The cigar experience has been pleasant. It has been above average. Is it $76 above average? Perhaps not. But when you are targeting a cigar line and specific cigars to people that have a lot of money or may feel inclined to purchase a cigar like this for a special occasion, once in a blue moon, then you know they're not hurting for business in that regard. They don't care if the average consumer can buy a cigar like this. Not that they don't care about that consumer, because they did come out with the cheaper line so that you can experience some of their less aged tobaccos in some well-constructed cigars. Look, I love Zaya Yunan's enthusiasm for his cigar company. I love his desire to learn about the science of cigar manufacturing and the benefits of growing tobacco in Costa Rica, and this is a man, like I said, with a very high IQ who knows what he's doing business wise, and I'm sure he knows what he's doing with the cigars as well. Do I agree that cigars should be made by scientists and wine sommeliers? No, I don't. I think it's ridiculous. I need to see some kind of documented supporting evidence to prove that. Okay, so I've put the cigar down, right? Smoking it for a while. I want to ask you a question. I want you to smell my shirt and tell me if I smell like cigar. Can you?
Not as much.
Not as much? I'm gonna
We're outside, but not as much.
Okay. I'm gonna stand up for a second, give you an opportunity to.
More.
More so?
Yeah.
Would you say that the cigar smells pretty strong on me, or is a light scent? Would you say it's a light scent?
It's medium.
Medium. But I still smell like cigar.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if I went indoors, that smell would intensify.
It would be more drastic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, there you have it, folks. El Septimo cigars are still going to make you smell like a cigar, regardless of the lack of use of pesticides and fertilizers or whatever kind of scientist is working behind the scenes to tell you otherwise. And no disrespect to Zaya Yunan, because, like I said, the man has charities, he helps a lot of people, he does a lot of good for this world. We need more people like him in this world. But I'm not going to tell you something if it's not the case. And if you're telling me something, you have to back it up with actual statistics, actual documented facts. Where are you getting the information from? That is what I need to know, because when I'm reviewing a cigar and I'm telling you folks out there what the company says, and it's obviously not the truth, you need to know this. And if it is the truth, then how come I still smell like a cigar? Look, I want to add something. Although it's ridiculously large, and I don't prefer larger ring gauge cigars, I have appreciated this cigar. The earthiness, the mild touches of sweetness, the hay in the barnyard, the smoothness of the cigar, the slight nuttiness to it. It's been a good cigar, very good cigar. But I've also had to touch it up 5 times. And regardless of the fact that I smell like a cigar, that's fine. I mean, I expected that. I didn't expect that. That would have been a miracle if that would have occurred. And I'm outdoors, mind you. But my seventh sense has not been awakened by this cigar. I'm sorry, it hasn't. No, I'm actually not sorry. It's just not something that occurred here. A very good cigar. I can't justify the price tag in any way. Not even for a special occasion. If someone gave it to me as a gift, I'd be very thankful for it. I'd smoke it again. I'd enjoy it as I did today, but I would never try to purchase it again on my own, even for a special occasion. Perhaps some of the other cigars in the other lines from the Diamond Collection or the other collections might be better and more worthy of the price tag. But when we're talking about a cigar that costs $76, and mind you, I got it on sale for a little over $60, the price has to come into question. Especially when what we're hearing from the company and the company's CEO, owner, are telling us about how great it is. And I want it to be that great. And I want to be able to feel that I plunked down some cash on a cigar that was worth it. El Septimo cigar. A cigar that provided a lot of barnyard and hay notes, some nuttiness, mild sweetness, extreme earthiness, extreme smoothness. A cigar that had a slightly dry finish to it, but left you feeling satisfied. It did do that. It left me feeling satisfied. I feel that I am gonna walk away from this experience feeling satisfied. I don't know if I'm gonna feel as fully satisfied as the company would like me to feel or says that I should feel, but nonetheless, for you folks out there that are either watching this review in parts or actually sit down and watch this review in straight through, let me tell you something. Do your research on cigars. Don't believe everything that the company tells you. They say that 99% of cigar companies know less than the cigar consumer. Well, then good for the 1%, I suppose, that does know what they're doing. Because in my experience, I'm finding that A lot of the cigar companies that I buy cigars from, they know their shit. They do. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it for generations. And we can dump on Cuba all day long and their monopoly. The same kind of monopoly that Costa Rica had back in the day when they had a small tobacco operation going on, and still have a small tobacco operation going on in comparison to other places. But as much as we want to say anything we want to say about Cuba, they're still cranking out some really good cigars. And yeah, they have their issues. When you're dealing with the soil, when you're dealing with climate change, you're going to have issues. When you're dealing with government interference, you're going to have issues. When you're dealing with overhyped marketing, you're going to have issues with expectations not being met. But I'm here to tell you today that while this is a good cigar, an excellent cigar in terms of the quality and overall construction, although I had to touch it up 5 or 6 times, it did deliver some very satisfying notes, and overall it was satisfying, but not to the degree of when I sit down and I have an Arturo Fuente Opus X. Heck, I go as far as to say not even to the degree that I would feel when I sit down and I have a Liga Privada number 9. And that cigar is about $15. So, is it a more organic, safer, healthier cigar? I'm not a doctor. I'm not even going to begin to touch on that subject, other than I'm going to say this. Cigars in Puerto Rico don't use fertilizers either. But you don't see them talking about how they're the best of the best. And Cuba says they're the best of the best because they have the legacy and the history to kind of back it up, to kind of remind us that they're the originators. But when you have a company telling you that they're the best of the best, and then they have these talking points and these scientific points, you have to question that. And you have to ask yourself. And no, I'm not angry. I'm not upset. I'm glad I did this because I want you, the consumer, you, the cigar lover, to know the truth. And with that, I leave you today on Backyard Cigars. Till next time, thank you for watching. Thank you for any comments. Bless you all.